Hello, everyone. Another wonderful day of lives. I said I was going to do this more often, and since I'm off this week, I wanted to get on all week. Today, we're going to be talking about another really good topic. How do I know I have ADHD? So I'm going to be talking to Aubrey about it as soon as she connects. There we go. I see. Hey, Camille. Hello, hello. All right. So let me put this in the comments. How do I know? What's up, lady? How
Hello.
do I know I have to talk it out loud or I will get sidetracked. So how do I know I have ADHD or my kids have ADHD? All right. Let me pin that. Pin. Okay. How are you? Your hair is just too cute.
Yeah, big change. Well, it's less to manage, right? So has too many things going on, not in my hair. That's not one of them. I had a buzz cut years ago and I really was like, maybe I should go back to that, but we'll do this for now. It may get shorter.
And make it shorter. Well, it's
Yeah.
cute. It's cute. It looks like it's easy to manage.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. You have a lot of hair. Yeah. You look nice today too.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I decided to, do it. Even if I'm off. That's crazy, right?
Well,
That
it,
tells you
it makes
something.
us
That's
feel
how
feel
stressed
spiffy.
out, bro, that's how stressed out I am. I can't do my hair when I'm not off.
Yes. Yep. Yes, I feel that.
That's crazy. All right, so we're going to do a fun topic today, and Aubrey is going to be sharing some of her story. But I wanted to also talk about, what actually falls under the different diagnosis, so we can talk to that too. So we're going to talk about just in general, how do we know, we as adults or our children have ADHD, and then Aubrey, if you want, I'm flowing with you, so you can tell your story however you want to. So I'm gonna flow with you.
Thank
But if you
you.
guys have any questions for us, please do not hesitate because some people wonder, do I actually have this? Even though everybody can't get an official diagnosis, it's still good to know what those symptoms include. So Aubrey, before we get started, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Aubrey Page, and I am an advocate for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which has many similar symptoms to ADHD. And I also am the CEO of the Change Starts Here Collaborative, where we host courses and support groups to support parents of kids with brain-based disabilities.
Very awesome. And if you want to catch a video of her, I think I did a full video on IG, but it's definitely
Yeah.
up on YouTube. It's really, really good. So, and actually my mom, I don't know if I told you, my mom watched the video. She said it was really, really good.
Oh,
So
nice.
there's more connection behind the scenes because of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, she said it was really good.
Oh, yeah. No, my mom started sending me all her friends once she knew what I did. She was like, "So this friend, their grandchild might have FASD. So if you could talk to them, yeah, all the time."
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So I am Yakini. I am a supporter of parents with ADHD and parents with children with ADHD. My goal is to have a one-stop shop of information. Because one of the things that I've learned is when I went on my journey, I felt like I was by myself and alone, and there was nobody else going through the same thing that I was going through, not knowing that there was a good percentage of the world going through the same thing that I was going through. So I wanted to be an advocate and put as much information, as possible as out there, so you guys can learn from us. So I'm very excited about that. So today we're going to talk about ADHD. We're going to talk about the symptoms, and then, like I said, Aubrey's going to kind of talk about some of her experiences, and then I'll share some of mine too. So how did you want to start? Did you want to start with some of the diagnosis, or did you want to start with your story?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the diagnosis is helpful because a lot of times, so years ago, I don't even know when it changed because I don't specialize in ADHD, but, we used to have ADHD and ADD. And so now when someone says I have ADHD, they only picture the hyperactivity, whereas it is separated into different types of ADHD
Right.
now. So that
Right.
can be really confusing if a parent gets told that their kid has ADHD and they're like, no, they don't.
Right.
It
Right.
looks very different.
Yeah, it does. So there are three types that you can be diagnosed with. You can be diagnosed with and I'm going to be looking at my notes because like I said, I forget. So you could be diagnosed with you can be diagnosed with the inattentive type, the hyperactivity impulsive type, and the combined type. And so when you think of inattention, you think of not being able to pay close attention, right? People
Right.
are talking to you and you're there, but you're not really there, right?
Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
hear a
yeah,
word
yeah.
that they're saying. You might not be able to follow directions, thoroughly. You have trouble organizing tasks.
Yeah.
And you tend to avoid, and this is like me 100%, anything that takes time and mental effort.
Yeah.
You tend to avoid it, right? It's like
To look
when
my
I
to-do
have to do
list.
with spreadsheets, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to put this to the side and I'll get to the easy stuff first and then I'll do this later. So those are just some examples of inattentive. Anything that you want to add to that?
Well, so I think my sister Cam was like late identified as being autistic. And so in that journey, we've discovered a lot of things that we didn't understand were part of autism, because when we were kids, that was not like, we're not having discussions about these things, right? And especially not girls. So I've been learning a lot about her experiences, and she was sending me stuff and I was like, oh, I do that too. I do that too, but not like, I mean, she is definitely autistic and I'm definitely not.
Right.
But I was like, wait a minute, some of these executive functioning things that I have learned what executive functioning is just in the last few years, because I had no need to know what it was before, but I've learned about it because of my kids.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I have these executive functioning symptoms. Well, it's got to be depression, right? So I have anxiety, PTSD, and depression. And so I've had pretty bad depression since pandemic. So I'm like, this is depression. Mm-hmm. So I've been in this long fight to get on medication, which I've been sharing with my followers. And I took the antidepressants and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I feel like this weight, for me, depression is like heavy. So I felt this weight come off of me. But the thing that I had been complaining to my doctor about with brain fog did not go away. That was still there. And I was like, do I go up on antidepressants? Well, my sister keeps sending me something, and she sent me something that I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. And it was somebody it was like a graphic of somebody laying on the couch, and they were surrounded by all the things that they needed to do. And like all of these things, like, I'm so lazy, I just need to get that done. Like, why haven't I done this already? All of those things, but they're just laying there. And so they look lazy. And I was like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I asked her, I said, do you think I have ADHD? She goes, do you think you have ADHD? One would think, as much as I know about the brain, I would know this, but it's hits so close to home. And for me, I was always justifying, well, I don't have this symptom, or it's not really that bad, or I'm very organized, which I am when I'm not now, not now. And so I couldn't, was this always there? And it's hard to look back and figure out if it's always there, because my experience was a little bit more different. I have always perseverated. I've always had a hard time with transitions. I've always gotten easily overwhelmed in new environments that have new rules that I don't understand. All of these things have always existed, but me not being able to accomplish tasks at all is a newer thing. And so I am trying to deny that this is actually the thing, because if it's the thing, then I am not lazy. And it's easier for me to believe that I'm lazy than I have something that is like, we like get this thought process about ourselves and us accomplishing tasks. So I really tried to deny it for a while. Right. And then I'm kind of the belief, because there's so many things that executive functioning is tied to, I was like, well, if I take the medicine and it works, then that's what it is. And if it doesn't work, then it's not that. And I took the medicine the first day. I was on Adderall. I am on Adderall. And I want to go back and say too, when I told my psych, who I've been talking to about depression and anxiety, I told her, I said, I think this might be a piece. My sister and I have been talking about it. I'm not sure. I don't know if that sounds crazy. She said, no, that doesn't sound crazy. We should explore that. What a relief.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've gone to doctors. I've had brain scans. I've had biopsies, all these things, because I can't figure out what's going on with my brain. And she was like, yeah, we should look into that. No big deal. I was talking to someone the other day, a therapist of one of my kids. And she's a Black woman. And she was telling me that she got diagnosed by her doctor. Or by her doctor. She talked to her doctor about it. Her doctor referred her out to somebody who diagnosed her. Mm-hmm. I'm not diagnosed. somebody referred her out to somebody to diagnose her. She went back to her doctor and she asked to start on stimulants. The doctor said yes, and then she would say, like, this isn't a much, because this isn't enough, like, because normally when you start medication you start low and slow and then titrate up, right? So she was starting low and slow and was asking for increases, and every time she asked for an increase, her doctor would make her fill out like a survey on addiction to try to judge whether she was an addict or not, and she had to pay for that in addition to all of the appointments and the medications, and she's like, it just wasn't worth it. I was like, nobody in their right mind has asked me to fill out a test to find out if I'm an addict. Right. So my ability to access medicine was helped by so many privileges that I have, but it's important that we recognize that because people don't question me. I know how to talk the talk, I know how to work the system, and I'm white. And so I just went in there and I was like, I think I have ADHD. And my doctor, who is a Black woman, said, yeah, sure, that might be a thing. So I really appreciate how easy it was for me. But I think when we're having discussions with friends and other members of our community, we consider that that's not what it looks like for everybody.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a really good point. And one of the videos that I also did with Dr. Dawn Brown, you guys can check out, is what is it called? It's not racism, but it's like race bias, you know, so
racial
really,
bias. Yeah,
racial bias. So it's really talking about how, yes, when it comes to whites versus Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, when it comes to the actual diagnosis, believing that somebody has ADHD or not really can be just because of the color of their skin. Yeah. So that is a really big thing too, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I truly believe that's one other reason why I was missed growing up.
Yeah.
You know, I was in not just because I was female and a lot of my symptoms weren't hyperactive symptoms, but also because I was Black. And so, yeah, so those things you have to definitely consider. So I really want to dig into, deeper into that and just, how are you feeling about all of this? But one of the things I want to share really quick is I just want to tell you guys a little bit more about the other one. So we talked about the inattentive type, and Aubrey has really been talking about, her experiences around that. But the hyperactivity piece, which, like she said, when it comes to ADHD, that's the first thing that people think of. It's like everybody is hyper. And ADD is the O term, right? Like before 1994, I think it was.
Oh, okay. So I'm a little behind.
Just like before then. So when people talk about ADD, it's more of that predominantly inattentive type. And predominantly was the word I was trying to think of. I was like, what is that word? Anyway, so for hyperactivity, you're fidgeting, you're moving a lot. Like me, I have my ball here because it just kind of keeps me going. You're often, it's like you interrupt conversations, and you always have something to say and want to say it before everybody else says it. I've seen my kids like dash into the front of the line because they're so impatient, and I'm like, okay, you got to come back, right?
Yes.
Right. So they're having trouble waiting their turn, and then talks excessively. Like my kids can talk for days. So those are just a few signs. Yes, there's a lot of different signs of hyperactivity, but those are just a few signs. And then obviously the combined type is having some of the symptoms of both. Now, what I thought was really interesting, just so you guys know, and this is under the DSM-5 and under the CDC, where for inattention, you have to have 6 or more symptoms of inattention for children up to 16, but 5 or more symptoms for adolescents that are 17 years old and older. So when you get your diagnosis, that's what they consider. They consider looking at the spectrum. You can't have just 1 or 2 things and it's just be, a diagnosed person. Right. But like I always say to people, when you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't, but I did. Yeah, no, I think that's the tough part about a lot of these brain-based diagnoses is that getting the diagnosis, for example, FASD, is very hard to get a diagnosis because you have to have confirmation of prenatal alcohol exposure. Well, some doctors don't accept hardly anything as confirmation of prenatal alcohol. You gotta show them a picture or something. So it's really hard to get that diagnosis, but it doesn't matter. If as a parent or as an individual, you can make accommodations so that you don't have to have the diagnosis. The diagnosis is very beneficial for FASD to get DD services because it's a developmental disability. But when you know, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, so now that you are feeling, yeah, this is definitely the thing that's been going on with my brain, how have you been feeling?
Yeah, it's been like maybe a week and a half. I don't know. I messaged you right after I realized. And it's been like a whole cycle of feelings. Like it's not like one. At first it was relief because I was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. I have been asking doctors for years what's going on with my brain. Now, let's think about years. Why is it years? Because before pandemic, my life was very structured. My kids went to public school. They went at a certain time. I would pick them up at a certain time. Our life had very strict structure to it. And I don't have that anymore because my kids are homeschooled. And it's kind of like, we have a schedule, but it's really loosey-goosey and we kind of wake up whenever and all that kind of stuff. Well, I thought this was good. And now I'm realizing maybe not so good because I just fell apart without all of that structure. So I kind of spiraled into my brain working less and less and less, whereas I felt like it was attached to the depression that was associated with pandemic. It was really associated to the lack of structure of pandemic. So identifying that has been helpful. I definitely am questioning a lot of things in my past. Like I was just talking to one of my kids yesterday because I told them and they're like, no, you don't. You don't have ADHD. You're not hyper. So we had a whole conversation about that. But one of my kids said, yeah, but you had it when you were little and you didn't know. And I was like, yeah, actually, I haven't thought a ton about that. But I do remember that I had major panic attacks when I was younger. And usually I remember some of the worst ones were around the bus in the morning. So getting ready for the bus, being on time, having all of the things. Now that I know what executive functioning is, that's a giant executive functioning test. But at the time, it just felt like everybody should be able to do this, like we're very like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get it done, So looking back, I'm like questioning a lot of things that why do I sit in my closet for 8 hours picking up and like getting distracted with every small thing that I have,
Right.
That's not, I don't think most kids do that. So it's been helpful to put it in perspective of things in my past, but then I also feel bad about all of the balls that I have dropped over the last 2 years, like so many things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. So it's been heavy of me, like I felt like a burden to my husband the other day because several things happened that he had to fix. And it was like, before it was like, oh, I'm incompetent. Now it's like, no, I have this disability. And then I don't know, it's different feelings.
Yeah.
But then there's I know what I have. So now I know better how to accommodate because I literally teach people how to accommodate these symptoms. So one would think I wouldn't have some ideas. So I started making a to-do list and it's got like 4,000 things on it because every time something pops in my head, I write it on the to-do list. But I am not then sitting there going, what do I do next? Which is normally what I do. I just sit there and stare and I can't get going. So, so it's been helpful for me to come up with some plans and then feel more hopeful that in the future, I always feel so guilty about not following through. When I tell somebody I'm going to do something and then I don't, I feel terrible because I'm like, it's like commitment is very important to me. So I'm hopeful that I will be able to get a hold of things moving forward and I won't do that as often. So it's been a lot. Yeah.
I bet it has been. Yeah. And well, how do I say this? Because I don't want to feel like I am being lax on what you're saying, right? The fact that sometimes you didn't make commitment, but I know myself, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to have friends who know me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I know you text me today, but if it doesn't have like urgent right in front of it, you may get a text back in like the end of the week or next week, right? So.
Well, and I always tell people, follow up with me with something that you need because it's at the top of your to-do list, but I got 4 billion things on my to-do list. And now it helps put in perspective. And I thought the other day too, I need to be intentional when I'm around my kids to say, I have ADHD. And so I may not remember what you're asking me to do, to try to normalize it that like people just have brain-based disabilities and we need to ask for help with accommodation sometimes or just put it in perspective for people. And that's totally fine. So I'm hoping to model the normalcy of it a little bit at home.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And if you guys have any experiences that you want to share, or any questions, let us know. I mean, we are going to talk about it from the advocate perspective or from the parent perspective, because I'm not a doctor. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be talking about it from the perspective. But I've been dealing with this for a long time now with my children and with myself. And to build on what Aubrey has said, for me, it was very validating. So I know everybody has different emotions when it comes to finding out their diagnosis. Sometimes it is just emotionally like negative. It's like, oh my God, I have this thing and I have a label. Other times it is emotionally almost satisfying or validating, right?
Yeah.
For me, that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
very validating, because all these years I was wondering why I couldn't finish, why it took me like 50 times to read the same page before I could understand it, why I wanted to jump in conversations, why I got in trouble so much for talking all of the time, right?
Yeah.
Why did certain things just spill out of my mouth? And I'm like, dang it, why did I just say that? Right?
I way overshare.
Right. And I'm like, oh God, why did I just say that? Now I have people hating me. But but it was very validating to understand what was going on with me. And it really helped so much when I started to put strategies in place, but also at the same time was okay with some of the things that happened, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's just so to your point about organization, I can organize an event blindfolded. Like, it could be, 200 to 1,000 people. I can do that blindfolded. I can't find my keys, my remote, I've lost my phone. My phone was stuck in my car for a year and I had no clue where it was. Like
I have a thing on my wallet now. It dings if I leave it at home, because
awesome.
Listen. But I also am really good at like my house. I have this new old house. I have a really old house now that we're renovating, and I can do all the plans for that. It's no, and they're like, oh wow, it's so impressive. Somebody asked me if I was an architect. I was like, no, I just can organize all of this really easy. But no, I don't know where my phone is, and like I'm going to be 10 minutes late to every appointment I make, and yeah. My sister just wrote, I told my doctor I was neurospicy. And I need to write down everything they said because I can't remember.
Hey, I got you. I have to write it down too. But you know what? I have problems going back to it. So like, I have notebooks on notebooks. And I do write things down because it really does help me get it out of my brain. Because sometimes I'll obsess over it. Yeah. But then I'm like, okay, I haven't gone back to that notebook.
Yeah.
Like 3 days. So I got to work on that too. That's something I have to work on.
If it's not in front of me, it doesn't exist. And I have heard, I've said that about my own children. And then I'm like, me too. So I'm trying to organize now, and even keep in mind with the renovation, how I'm organizing stuff there to try to help accommodate all three of us neurodiverse people in my house. Yeah. My husband being the only neurotypical person, and we decided last night that makes him very boring.
Right. That's exactly right.
My kid was like, yeah, all he does is listen to podcasts about finances. This says she could rule the world if she could just find her pants. Yes, exactly.
That is hilarious. All right, so we got a couple things. I write things down and literally lose the paper. Mm-hmm. That's me. Or I will write, my favorite is I would write a grocery list, because everybody's like, you need to write a grocery list. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I will write a grocery list and I will leave it at home every single time. And then I get to the grocery store and I need something for me, a meal. Mm-hmm. And I have to make a trip. Like one time I had to make a trip like 2 or 3 times, because every time I would forget the grocery list, end up at the store and forget what I needed. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have to put everything on my phone because I actually don't lose my phone that often. It's mostly my wallet, but all of my lists are on my phone, and I just actually put Alexa in our house, and I'm trying to rely on her because things pop in my head and I can say them real quick, but like putting it down is like a whole thing. But yes, yes, I just got rid of a whole bunch of sticky notes on my desk yesterday that I'd never did anything with.
It never fails. My brother said if my niece, she could Oh, that's one you just read. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so
that
funny.
was funny.
That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind. Yeah. It never
Yeah.
fails. So what do you think are the next things that, so you're kind of in this newness stage, right?
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about doing for yourself? Like how are you putting strategies in place, or what's kind of the next step for you?
Well, when all of this was going down, I told my husband, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I have ADHD," and he was like, "Okay." He said, "I've seen that your brain can't do as much over the last few years, but I didn't know what it was." And I was like, "I didn't know what it was either." So this whole thing, like, I stopped all housework. I cleaned out the dishes twice in the last few days, and I hadn't done it in years because I literally couldn't. Like, it was like so overwhelming. I told my mom and my sister too, every time they would hang out together and they'd be doing all these crafts and stuff, I'd be like, "Oh, I want to do it, but I can't." And I thought it was depression. And now I'm like, dude, if my brain was working. I mean, the first time, or the second time I took medicine, I took it up to 10 milligrams. Woo! It's probably like the amount of like a 10-year-old kid. But I was like, oh my gosh, my brain is operating. This is insane. So getting used to kind of harnessing that power, and doing the things when I need to do them, writing down everything, because I used to tell myself I'll remember and I do not, and then something bites me in the butt. So right now I'm playing a lot of catch up.
Okay.
But so my husband said, yeah, it could be ADHD. This makes sense. Well, then I got COVID right about the time that I was supposed to start taking the ADHD meds. And I was like, let's not take speed while our body is recovering. So it was really mild case. But after I healed, I wanted to take it. And he said, I don't understand why there's all this emphasis on the medication. Like, if you just have it, then we just accommodate. It doesn't matter whether it's diagnosed or the medicine works or whatever. And I was like, that's, not a terrible point. So he's been asking in a lot of ways how he can help. And I feel like it's helped him put some things in perspective that I do, that like he does it. I mean, he never really gets frustrated with me, but it just helps. So I'm trying to plan ahead and see better what works for me, and how I can, not lose all my things and do the things that I love. I feel like one of the things is because I was always so behind in doing everything, I never felt like I could relax, which we attributed to anxiety. And my sister says, well, I guess then the question is, do you have anxiety because you have ADHD, or do you just have anxiety? And I was like, what? And I think I have PTSD from childhood trauma. So I definitely have anxiety associated with that. But a lot of that's healed in therapy. And now I'm like, most of my anxiety is around, going to a new place where I don't know the rules. I'm like trying to call ahead and be like, what do you do? How does this work? Tell me how the flow is. Because it's just so stressful. So it's been interesting to think of how I'm intentionally accommodating myself versus what I saw as a personality defect. And like, I don't know, it feels more empowering versus sucky, I guess.
No, I like that. And then one thing I want to share just from my point of view, and everybody's going to have a different point of view. So it was really interesting about what your husband had asked. Why is there so much emphasis on the medication? So I am a believer of you use what you need, right? I have, there's 3 of us and 2 of us are on medication and 1 of us is not, because at this point we're using what we need. I am one of those people that grew up where we are, we're exercise people. We are vitamin people. Like, I just took a bunch of my vitamins this morning, but sometimes that's just not enough. And sometimes we need that assistance and still need all the other things, right? Right. So it's not like, because it's, everybody says that saying, pills without skills. It's not like you take this medication and then you do nothing else. You have to do those accommodations anyway. You have to take care of your body. You have to take care of your mind. I mean, you still have to do those things, but now it's alongside it. Where my daughter, she is strictly on accommodations, and that is working well for her. So I am both ways. And I don't want people to think, because I don't force one way or the other, right? It's kind of like you do what's right for you and your family. So.
I think I've been talking to parents about this a lot with medication, like in general, and a struggle is that FASD often presents very much like ADHD, but the medication doesn't necessarily work. You have to have comorbid ADHD with FASD because the ADHD medication targets the part of the brain that is different with ADHD. So just because you have executive functioning deficits doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be fixed by ADHD medication. So when I'm talking to parents, they're like, I don't know if I should do medicine or not. I said, if your kid is doing stuff and they feel bad about themselves afterwards, like they're beating themselves up for impulsively doing something, or, you know, in the case of FASD, like, you know, being very upset, maybe yelling at people, whatever, and they feel bad about it afterwards, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. They feel out of control. They feel like they can't do what they want to do. And medication helps us harness that again. I felt like I could get nothing done, and the medication has helped me get a lot of stuff done, but also have a good sense of accomplishment. And so that helps my self-esteem even, but I'm not even a kid, right? So like when we have kids and we're questioning, is medication the right step? I think the question is, would medication help your kid feel better about themselves, feel more accomplished? Like, you don't want a kid growing up, I guess, like we did, but like, I think that so many of us that find out later overcompensated majorly when we were growing up.
Yeah.
But for many of our kids, we don't want them to feel like something's wrong with them.
Right.
We want them to see that, like, yes, your brain works different, but I give you medicine just like somebody with diabetes would take medicine for their blood sugar, which is what I told my husband. I said, if you could take medicine to fix your back pain, would you?
Right.
I mean, you would, right? So that's where I'm at right now.
No, and I like that. And to your point, I did try everything. Oh my God, I have. So my child has been, like I said, the vitamins, exercising, eating certain foods, staying away from certain dyes, going to a chiropractor because I heard that worked. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, he has been through every natural thing under the sun. So I have done that. And I mean, and the reality was those things alongside with medication happened to work for him. So
yeah.
Oh, somebody, FASD warrior. I have ADHD, and the only way to know for me is distractions and forgetting something after a couple seconds, finding something else. I know, right? That is so true. I am like the worst distracted person ever. I get distracted so easily.
I saw a video of this lady I follow, and she was like she was like, I had a bad ADHD morning, and I was thinking, what did I look up? I don't know if Cam remembers because she's watching, but it was like ADHD tailspin or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's been pandemic. That's when I could no longer. So when I was a kid, I was in charge of me, and like, yes, being a child is hard, but like I didn't have a lot to manage. Then I got into college, and college it's more to manage. And I would stay up late nights trying to get everything done. And now I'm watching my husband get stuff done. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so fast. But it's not because he's really that fast. So in college I had a lot to do. Then I joined the Navy, and I remember like somebody at some point was like, you just have to put work down and go home. And I always thought of myself as a workaholic, but I think a lot of it was associated with guilt that I had not accomplished as much as I was supposed to during the day.
Yes.
So that was hard. But then, we renovated a house. Life was a lot easier. I was in the Navy, not all this toxic leadership situation. And then I started parenting. Parenting one kid, challenging, but like doable. So everybody's like, oh my gosh, you're so organized. You have all the things for the meetings. And then we had a rental property, and then we sold the rental property because we were going to take placement of a second kid. And the second kid moved in months before pandemic. So now I feel like I have not done all the things that I did for my first kid, and but because like I literally couldn't. And so trying to notice that the pandemic started a few weeks later, my husband deployed. Now I have two kids that are at home all the time that I'm homeschooling, and my husband's gone. And, it was just too much. I broke. And so I think just like there are other people, I've been sharing my depression journey on my stories, and people have been like, oh my gosh, that's me too. Just like there are people in my stories and watching this that are going to say, oh yes, I need to take care of my depression symptoms. There are people who are going to be like, okay, so maybe I do have ADHD, but you don't feel like you did because historically it just looked like I had a lot going on. And that's what every time I go to the doctor, they're always like, oh, well, you have a lot going on. I'm like, I know, but it doesn't ungo on just because it stresses me out. Every doctor I've ever talked to about this is it's stress. It's stress. It's stress. There was more to this and nobody dug down deeper. And when I told my psych, she did give me there's like a basic screener for ADHD, and she asked me the questions. So it's not like she was just like, oh, okay, and then whatever. But, you know, we went through some stuff. But she was the first person to like hear that, but also the first person I mentioned it to. If I wouldn't have figured it out, it would have never been figured out. And I told my kids the other day, the only reason I figured it out is because of them. Because I wouldn't know nearly anything I know about the brain if I wasn't parenting kids with brain-based disabilities. So the fact that I parent them and learn from them and about them and for them is how I learned about myself, which is kind of crazy.
And well, that's how a lot of us learn, right? It's through the journey.
That's how you realized, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly right. Very cool. So is there anything as we close up? Any last things that you want to say? Any thoughts that you want to share?
I think that I am hoping that by sharing this, people who may have like similar experiences in that they feel like they're pretty organized and they're just lazy and have just felt like really kind of, I felt like I woke up from a coma is what it really felt like. So I'm hoping that they are, you know, able to question themselves and like, maybe this could be me, and dig in a little bit deeper. And then also, I mean, my entire adulthood, everybody has lauded my success and my organization and, you know, everything. Oh, she does so well. She's so impressive. I always tell people, okay, well, apparently this whole time I've had ADHD. So having ADHD does not make you unable to be successful at life. These are different things, but it does. Knowing about it helps you create the right accommodations that you can be more successful and improve your quality of life, which is what I'm looking forward to now.
No, that's good. And one of the things I want to say is that everybody is still, not everybody, there are some people who are still nervous about sharing the fact that they have ADHD, and which is, how do you say it? It's normal, right? It is
I think it's a complex topic.
Exactly. It is a complex topic. So for those who are afraid to share, like in the workplace, for example, it doesn't mean you have to say, I need these accommodations because I have ADHD. You can ask for certain things or start certain things. Like we started a co-working group at work. So that really helped me do some of my projects within that accountability group. And I decided to meet with my boss once a week. So because I knew I needed to stay up on my project. So there's things that you can put in place without ever saying you have ADHD. That will work really well for you. So,
yeah, I actually had a boss when I was in Afghanistan who had ADHD and was very vocal about it. And I tried like multiple ways to get paperwork through them to the next level, and I couldn't get it. So then I made a visual thing where you like move sticky notes based on where the paperwork was, and it totally worked. And now it's funny that I, in fact, was struggling with the same thing, but was like, oh, let me figure this out for you.
That's too funny. That is too funny. Well, cool. Well, I'm so glad you got on. I'm sorry I missed some of these comments, but these were so good. But I'm glad that you got on and shared your story because, again, there's a lot of people going through the same thing, right? Yeah.
And I want to make sure that people know it's not. Yeah, there's more of us out there. Come join us.
Yes, we're like our own group, our own club.
Yeah, come join our ADHD cult.
It's crazy. It is crazy. And it's interesting. It's been a really good journey for me, I will have to say. And part of it is I'm just in a different place. I'm in a place where I really wanted to know what was going on with me and really wanted to put different things in place to help me do things better. So yeah, it's just been a really, really good and interesting journey for me. So I'm glad I'm going through it. She says cookies.
Well, and now I get to look at your content in a different light, right? It's always for other people, not for me.
That's true. That is interesting. That is interesting. So what does cookies mean? Cookies? What's cookies?
Somebody said cookies?
Somebody said cookies. Oh,
I can't figure out how to use this. I don't know how to scroll.
that's all right.
Help me.
No worries. All right, Aubrey.
Alrighty.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And so everybody knows this will be up on the main feed for about a couple of days. And then, but the video will always be always be available on the video page. So you guys can check it out.
Okay.
Yay.
Thanks, Yakini.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.